Hold on a second here. There, clear picture. Hello again, welcome back inside the Tier 4 studio here in Morgantown, West Virginia. Sorry for the delay, it is Wednesday. We normally meet at 3:45 for Q&A. I had a neighborhood visitor, somebody going around trying to sell me siding for my house, and on November 1st, believe it or not, that person wouldn't take no for an answer, so had to make it down to the lab in time to start. Didn't do so, my apologies. I'll stay 5 extra minutes. You know the drill here. I already have some questions queued up from our message board at earsports.com. Welcome your questions here. Type them in as you watch and listen and think of something that can entertain the crowd or maybe inform you or perhaps even me. Who knows? Sometimes even the host needs educated about the team he thinks he knows. What do we have Saturday? Pivotal game, I think, at this juncture of the season for West Virginia. Number 15 in the playoff rankings, I believe. Iowa State. That's the ranking that really matters right now. Not going to make it to the top 4, I wouldn't think. But who thought that Iowa State would be this high or 6-2 at this stage of the season? I think it's realistic if you looked at your schedule back at the end of August and try to pencil in wins. Not toss-ups, but games that you expected to win. Certainly Iowa State is probably one of them based on the history in recent years, not only head-to-head in the matchups, but you figure the trajectory of the two programs. West Virginia coming off a 10-win season, continuity on the coaching staff, an upgrade at quarterback, really good running game, you thought. Some of that has proven to be true. Some of it hasn't. Iowa State, definitely the surprise of the Big 12, maybe in the country. 6-2, had a lead against Iowa, couldn't finish that one. Went and won in Oklahoma, shut out Kansas, kept TCU's offense out of the end zone. A lot of good things about them. Probably what's most surprising, went to play Texas on a Thursday night, looked terrible. The quarterback that you thought was the answer didn't play very well. They lose 17-7 to the Longhorns. And then their quarterback leaves the team. They go to Oklahoma, 4-touchdown underdog, backup quarterback. What do they do? Well, they win 38-31. They've been rolling since. Really good quarterback. Kemp doesn't make mistakes. From Massillon, Ohio. Actually, West Virginia recruited him a couple of years ago. He ended up going to Iowa State and looks like a fixture for, well, certainly the rest of the season here. And that's all really Iowa State cares about because senior-laden team, a lot of older guys who have been around for a while and have building through 2 coaching staffs to get toward this point. And here they are, probably everything they thought they could have done in a best-case scenario. And they don't want to blow it now, and to their credit, they don't make a lot of mistakes, not a lot of penalties, not a lot of miscues or blown assignments or turnovers. Very solid team. Not what you saw from West Virginia on Saturday, and not what you've seen in their lower moments this season. They will have to be who they haven't been against these top opponents to win the game. They do have a win against a ranked team this year, if you want to call Texas Tech a ranked team. I don't. I mean, they had a number next to their name. There's very little about them that indicates they're one of the best 25 teams. Truthfully, there's probably about 15 good teams in the country this year. Iowa State, though, by ranking and by reputation, definitely is one of those teams. But let's get not too far ahead of ourselves. Let's get to the questions here. Already got a couple on the screen. Have a couple over to the side here I have to defer to. I'll get to those first, and I'll get to the ones here. We begin, actually, a question from yesterday from Earstein. And he wonders, provocatively I think here, has the move away from a bigger body on the strong side hurt our defense? This is a defensive line question. They don't have bigger bodies because they can't get them. Defensive line is extremely tricky to recruit, especially in a 3-person front. I think one reason West Virginia does a 3-3-5 is because, apart from how tricky it is and the variables that you just don't see many times a year, it's easier to recruit 3 defensive linemen than it is 4. And it's a hard position. You're looking at people in the South and Southeast and maybe out West who get the really big athletic kids who can play on that defensive line. I think one reason that West Virginia has looked at junior college players for Jalen Harveys and Xavier Pegues and Ezekiel Rose is that they're from that area. They're from Mississippi and they're from some of those states that feed into those junior colleges, and that junior college level is pretty good. It's competitive. It's low Division I would say, maybe Group of 5 level on some of that talent. And if you can get them on your team, you can build them up for 2 or 3 seasons. It helps. I think that's one reason why they've gone that route. Otherwise, it's just hard to recruit high school kids who are 6'5" and 280 pounds. It's easy to recruit them. it's hard to get them. So I think they do what they can, and then look at people who they can develop and maybe get on the field, similar to the offensive line in the third year of the program, so they can be sophomores, juniors, and seniors on the field. The trouble for West Virginia is they played a defensive lineman at end last year. He's a sophomore. They're playing 2 true freshman nose tackles, nose guards this season. They probably like these players, and I think that you can look at Reese Donahue and Lamont McDougal and even Stills and say, yeah, these are pretty good players right now. They'll be great in the future, except they're playing right now. I think the other Stills comes in next year, and there's probably an expectation that a top recruit could play. I'm not sure you want to be in the cycle of repeatedly playing true freshmen out there. You want to get them grown up, muscled, mature physically, because it's a hard position. I don't know that West Virginia will be in that spot anytime soon. If they found really good high school freshmen that could play that were 280 pounds, they would. Some schools can do that. West Virginia can't. I think that they miss girth and size and just physical maturity up front, and that's probably why you've seen people like Ezekiel Rose kind of make a dent recently. Do I think they miss him, or do I think it's hurt? Just not having girth up front, not having size, being able to be moved around and not hold your point and let things happen behind you, that's a detriment to a defense. You have to be able to do the plan on the defensive line, which is, by and large, be big and create space for people behind you. Haven't done that. Moving on to other questions here. Excuse me. KP55 says, what do you think will be done to address the run game? Not much seen last week with run play calling. The stick draw doesn't work when the nose guard is standing waiting on the handoff. I don't think those are stick draw plays. I think those are just straight up draws, and it's just not working. Either way, stick draw, true draw. The center and the guards have been under attack the past couple of weeks. They haven't, been as rigid as they can be, or they have been before. Maybe time to kick that play. The trouble is when you have people who are crashing so hard on your offensive line because they think they can, if you can time up that draw, it works. And there were a couple plays, if you look at on film, especially against Baylor, I believe, if it hits, then it's going to hit. The space is there, and you can go for yardage and yardage and yardage. You got to run them cleanly to make it work. They haven't been able to do that because, as you said, sometimes that center's been put on skates and bounced into the backfield, not conducive to the run game there. What do I think has to work? Well, Jake Spavital is going to keep it easy. I think maybe one of my comments and my critiques is that I think defenses are planning for like 3 runs and just getting ready for different formations and hoping that during the week you can identify them and get kind of tells and indicators on film. Truly, this is like an inside zone team. They don't see them doing a whole lot of counter. They will pull guards, but you can read that stuff. They've tried to do things where you pull a guard and you do something off of that out of deception. But I think rather than do more and try to find something that works, what they're going to do in practice, pare it down, ask your players to do fewer things really well rather than asking players to do more things well. So keep it simple, and Spavital says that might be the way for them to go right now. Keep it simple, Spavital. How about that? I'm not sure that's what I would do. I'm not sure that anybody asked me what I would do. I think that their fix is a good idea, though. If you have guys who can do 2 things and do them really well, spend your practice time on that. But certainly got to be better on inside run. I think you can probably stretch it outside a little bit if you want to, but maybe what hasn't been working shouldn't be abandoned, because if you can't do what you've been working on, there's a lot of risk involved with inviting something into the repertoire right now that you haven't worked on up to this point. So can it be good with different things? Who knows? Can it be good with things you were good at before? That's probably the safer bet. WV Rugger71 asks, is Pettaway in the proverbial doghouse, or does he not bring enough to the table to warrant more carries? Seems like his running style will be better with the lack of physicality the O-line has shown. It's just hard to get him the carries. Crawford's the starter. You got to give him a chance every game to get going and break out of whatever has him shackled right now. Kennedy's your clear number 2, Kennedy McCoy. Where do you get the third back? I don't know. I think it's interesting this week that they're trying to talk about being more physical. They're going to play a physical defense. And who had 30 carries and 180 yards against Iowa State last year? Martel Pettaway. Had some issues in blitz pickup against Texas Tech, I believe. I don't remember the opponent. I'm pretty sure it's Texas Tech. I definitely remember the plays. It got Wilger sacked a few times. That's a trust issue. If you can't pick up the blitz, that's a pretty good indication that if you're in the game, they're going to be running the ball. Because if you can't block, they're not going to have you in to pass block and save your quarterback. So you can pretty much bet on 32 getting the carry in there. What's probably optimistic for him is he did run block and did step forward and did stick his face in somebody else's a few times against Oklahoma State's attack. Probably should get in the field. I would try to get all 3 involved early and try to find a hot hand. That's been a practice in the past. Find the hot hand and keep going. Maybe that's what you see this time. I think the timing is certainly curious, though, because he has had success against Iowa State, and this is a team that needs a little bit of toughness. The question is, does he have that? Has he shown that in practice? I can't tell you because the small sample doesn't really reveal too much about him so far. WV2303 says, does Kenny Robinson have a brighter future at cornerback or safety? Right now, looking like safety because he started at safety, went to corner, wasn't great, went back to safety. I think if he was a part of the future, maybe you don't move him. But again, I don't know how long term that is. There's a lot of pieces up in the air right now for the safety position. Is Trayvon definitely a free safety? Is he a bandit? Does he just fit in depending on injuries? Is Kenny Robinson going to be the free safety in the future? Trayvon's only a junior. If he doesn't go pro, if he stays in school, which perhaps his degree of play this year indicates he might stay in school, then you have a decision to make at Kenny Robinson. Is he one of your best three safeties? Can he play spur or bandit? I don't know. Toy Saber's a bandit, and he is a junior. He should be back next season, too. I think they're going to have a lot of conversations about him. He has the talent to be on the field. He has the size. He has the look. He has the speed. He can obviously make some plays, as you saw Saturday. Where do you find him? I don't know. I know there was talk about bringing him down closer and maybe making him a linebacker. This was back in August, though, so they've already had these thoughts and conversations about him in the past. Will they do it in the future? Certainly. Where he lands, I don't know. I kind of like what you see from him as a defensive back. So let's take linebacker out of the equation. And they've recruited cornerback so hard this cycle in particular, trying to get some junior college guys and trying to work with some of the younger players in the roster. Might make sense to keep him at safety, and perhaps he lines up as the free in the future. Who sees? His second question, what's wrong with Trayvon? I know it's late in his career, but could we possibly move him to corner? No. I remember correctly, he was a great cornerback prospect out of high school, but he's moved to safety because the team has a need, and it was his quickest pass to playing time. He's a safety. I don't think you can expect him to cover or make plays that you've seen him make at free safety at corner. There's a lot of space there. There's a lot of quick twitch involved, and I think he's a good athlete, but probably better as a back-end defender. His problem right now is he's just not running through the plays. He seems hesitant. His footwork doesn't have him, again, completing the action that he initiates. You see him overrun plays. You see him slow down and have people run through him. He's tackling with his arms and his leaps a lot, and he's not lining himself up and finishing like he was before. That's angles, that's confidence, that's reservation and hesitation. It only takes one or two plays to get out of that, and I'm pretty sure he's aware of his shortcomings, if not from his experience, then from the way it's been pointed out to him by his coaches in the past, I've heard 2 or 3 weeks. So you figure sooner rather than later with someone who's been around as long as him. It's not that he forgot how to play. I think it's just that he hasn't found the collective confidence to start and to finish plays like he has before. No secret, though. He just hasn't tackled. He hasn't put the lid on the back end of the defense like you want your free safety to. Any sense for how the young linebackers are progressing? I mean, Hensley, Sandwich, and Timmons, not much field time, but we're not loading up on recruits at that position either. Are they fine, but we can't risk taking Long or Al off the field, or is the jury still out? Don't know a lot about them because they're not in the game very much. I sense they don't get a lot of practice time. Frequently, you'll hear people slide in names from people who pop up in practice, especially at a time like this where someone has an opportunity to get a couple snaps, get a series, become a bigger role player than he had been before. I'm not hearing any of that. I haven't heard any of those 3 names all season. I know that Hensley was someone that they expected to take on a greater role. Once Brendan Fern's one's out, it hasn't happened. I think you're right. Some of the recruiting practices suggest that they do believe in the future of these linebackers they recruited 2 seasons ago. They're all sophomores or redshirt freshmen right now, so it's still early, but you want them on the field and kind of answering some questions now than in the spring or in the summer next year. And truthfully, I just can't tell you a whole lot about them because what you see is what you get. You haven't seen very much. And again, no one really says a whole lot about those guys. Honestly, beyond those 3 or 4 linebackers, Dylan Tonkery, I would probably make your 4th linebacker. Not a whole lot of reps there, but there's also not a whole lot of available reps frequently. A lot of coaches' questions and concerns, they're answered when you put a player on the field and let him play. You haven't in that conference championship game. Quite likely it's going to be 1-2 loss team in there if there's just a little bit of chaos. There's a lot of chaos. Who knows how things shake out. Win out. You finish you feel that Kenny Robinson gives WVU the best chance to win a free safety over Trayvon? And do I think Tony Gibbs will make the change? I think they're going to take a long, hard look at this. Um, it's Fort Knox stuff over there when it comes to names and injuries. But if he can't play or if he can't play 100%, it's a lot easier to make a pretty drastic move. Seems so. I mean, we're talking about moving a guy who's a freshman All-American who's played more than anybody at free safety. You're moving him to bandit. You're keeping him a bandit. If it's a necessity because 100% accurate, if they're close to 50-50 and run past, they're good. If they're getting 5 or 6 yards to carry, they're good. If they're predictable, and if their linemen are on skates and they can't open blocks, they're not going to be able to run the ball. It becomes very easy to guard their passing attack. Raymond Bodges asks, since ISU uses basically 3 defensive linemen and drops 8, do you think we'll lean more on the running game this week? Maybe more, I don't know. But again, if you can keep running into a wall and running it doesn't make sense, then I don't know if that makes sense as an explanation here, but I think they're going to have a pretty good idea early on what they're going to get from Iowa State's defense. And again, just because they play 3 up front doesn't mean they're committing 8 to the pass. It's very easy to read and react when you're using linebackers who are athletic and who get around blocks and who can take on blockers and make plays. This is not an 8-man pass defense. They're going to put 4 and 5 guys at the second intermediate level, and if it's zone or if they're watching certain cues, they can react. It sounds simple to run the ball against a 3-man box. It is simple to run against a 3-man box. It will not be a 3-man box. They're good against the run. They haven't allowed more than 190 yards in a game. They get 7.5 tackles for a loss a game. They have some physical big space eaters on the line. They have good outside linebacker and inside linebacker players who can twist and who can work with the linemen. They've kept 2 teams under 100 yards rushing. Again, they've kept out of the end zone TCU and Kansas. They gave up 13 points to Texas Tech. They're good defensively. Don't misconstrue their alignments or their zone tendencies or anything that you've heard with them being an opportunity for West Virginia to get healthy in the running game. I do think that just because they probably can't afford to have Greer dropping back and maybe moving around and dancing and having shaky footwork because the offensive line can't pass block, I don't think they want to continue to subject their passing game to that. Handoff sometimes can be productive, but they got to get it going. I think if it isn't going, they know their way out of trouble, and that's with Will Greer's right arm. Sean Golden says, is the lack of run game, wow, this is still a popular topic, huh? Is the lack of run game as simple as Skyler graduating and not being able to run the zone read effectively, and your thoughts on how to improve the run game? I wrote about this before. I've asked the coaches about this before. They will not really confirm it, which means I'm right probably, or at least the idea is right, but there's a difference when you used to defend West Virginia. You kind of had to account for the possibility the quarterback would either run a design or on the keep. You don't put a helmet on Will Greer right now because they're not going to run him. I think that became apparent to the point they started to run him more. He was keeping on third downs. This happened at the goal line the other day, and I think it was interesting that in that situation, Oklahoma State had somebody assigned to Greer, and when he went outside, nearly fumbled that ball through the end zone or to the other team. That could have been a touchback, could have been a turnover. That was a dangerous moment there for the offense. But again, it was interesting to me. They ran him on third down near the goal line. That's kind of like just to spring a trap maybe, but there was somebody who was there for him. So in theory, in situations or maybe in general, teams are more aware of Greer running the ball right now. That wasn't there early in the season. And again, if it's a numbers thing. You're going to have 3 receivers, 4 receivers, and you're going to have 5 offensive linemen. So now you have 8 or 9 people who are not running the ball. It's very easy to focus on one person, 2 people, if it's just the running back and the fullback in the backfield or in the game. It's a little bit more difficult when the quarterback can keep it. And then Howard, didn't have to keep it. He could read it and throw it. He can move around and throw it. No, I don't think Greer had that in his pocket or wasn't asked to do that before. Probably was a problem, or at least a complication of the running game. You can just kind of devote that extra player to the box or to stopping a counter or working on a zone play or anything like that. Maybe they fixed that problem because Greer has run the ball, especially on third downs lately. Clayton Lidner asks, do you think WVU basketball will go to the Final Four this year? No. Woodrow Reed Matheny says, what do we think happened with Crawford? All we know is that he wasn't healthy. You're just not going to get answers out of people. I've heard torso, shoulder. I've even had people tell me, watch when he gets up. Teammates won't pick him up because they don't want to hurt his arm. That's a little bit too Zapruder for me. I just think that, he has not been behind his shoulder pads as often as he has been in the past. I think he runs with his eyes a little bit sometimes, and he looks for space that may not be there. And then if you do that and you get caught, and the wave catches up to you, there's really nowhere to run. So authoritative, aggressive, who knows? Just hasn't been himself. I thought at times last game he looked better. He did push through some crowds. He did hit some people. There was a really encouraging third down run in the third quarter when they had a chance to really get back in that game and people got excited. There were moments there, and the fact they keep running him out there means that he's healthy enough to practice and play, and they think it'll pop soon. I gotta think with someone who was as good as he was early in the season that if he's fresh again and he gets a chance to kind of re-energize himself, he should be good to go. I just have a feeling a game is coming with him where he hits for, I don't know, 100 yards, but let's say he hits for 85 yards and he's averaging 6-7 yards a carry again. Raymond says, Woodrow, I don't know for sure, but a few games ago Crawford was tackled and grabbed his ankle and never really came out of the game, but he hasn't been the same since. Again, possibility here. Raymond again says, I understand what you're saying. I had just read somewhere that this week the ISU had dropped a lot to prevent that. Yeah, they cover the pass lanes pretty well. It's a zone defense at times. They're good at posts and crossing patterns and switching things off. It's not TCU, but they cover things up pretty well. Again, look at the scores, and if you want to see a pretty good job defensively, what they did against Texas Tech is a good indication of how they're going to guard an offense like this. Didn't give up a ton of plays, got after the quarterback, caused some turnovers, and were just effective. There were a couple plays in there in particular on a screenplay where they just put people in the right spots and they were trained to read and react and practice it on film. And when they saw something, they were triggered and they went and they got into a space to make a tackle or an interception. West Virginia's pass game, similar conceptually to Texas Tech's. It'd be interesting to see how they try to get guys open there with, some of the things they do with, not picks and screens, but using players to get another teammate open. Can they do that and find some space? And can West Virginia make catches? Can they make a test of catches? Can they make the spectacular play? And really, by and large, they didn't make against Oklahoma State. But a lot of that pass protection, dry conditions, it may not be great weather again on Saturday. A whole lot of ifs that you can't control. Controlling what you can control. Keeping your quarterback upright and catching the ball with maybe bare hands, but certainly dry hands when you get a chance. Good idea in football. Let's see here. Dustin Hatfield says, linemen are getting beaten on a consistent basis, maybe using creative formations to out-leverage the front. We don't do any outside design runs other than jet sweeps. Agreed, and those jet sweeps aren't working very well. Tevin Bush, I would love to know what his snap-to-touch ratio is. I bet you it's pretty close to even, but teams can key on him. What was pretty interesting last week, though, is they brought him in. They faked that little touch pass to him. They threw an inside kind of shovel pass to Wellman. That's like a two-point conversion play or a goal line play. They used it, coming out outside their own 20. They got about 10 yards to Wellman. That was interesting. Creativity like that can be good. I just wonder, you can do one or two of those plays a week, and you can practice something that you haven't used in a game or haven't practiced in weeks. You can't do 5 or 6 or 8 or 10 of those things. You just don't have the practice time, and you don't have the availability. If your players focus on repetition and get really good at stuff you don't work on very much. I agree. Outside zone they used to use, they don't use very much. You're not going to see them do tall sweeps, but you did have a play where they faked inside and they pitched it out to Crawford and he made a guy miss out in space. He wasn't relying on blockers. He was relying on his shiftiness and his twitchiness to make a guy miss, and he did, and he got a first down. Certainly they had the capability to do things like that. It's in the playbook. It's in the coach's mind. It's in the it's in the potential and the repertoire, again, of the running backs there. Can they do it? Maybe they're a little bit worried about their edge guys, their tackles. Can they get outside and hold blocks? Can they get a guard to come over and help? A lot more that we don't know probably that happens in practice. There's trial and error, I'm sure. But I do think that the fact they can't hold up inside, especially, that center guard was under siege last week, and that's not necessarily new. That's probably complicating a lot of zone stuff inside. Another question here. Raymond says, thoughts on solutions to solve the student section attendance leaving early. I would give them better seats. How's that? I would move them down. And again, if you're getting bludgeoned and it's raining out, I'm not going to blame students for getting there. It's hard to get to games. New games aren't great. I'm not going to blame students on that one. I think they could do things better, but I also think they have it pretty good too. They have a whole upper level of themselves. they can get into the games quicker, they can get into the games easier. That might ensure better attendance. But when it's raining and your team is getting beat by 3 touchdowns, man, there are a lot of people getting out there. It wasn't just students. It's an easy talking point. It doesn't look great on television, but there's solutions that are out there you have to perhaps pursue. Justin Kazemka really need the twos to step up their play. Team is getting worn out, and it shows. Yeah, and that was the worry too. There's somebody I talk to on a fairly regular basis. I ask questions, and this person is pretty accurate, but pretty forthright and honest too, and told me after the TCU game, watch out for them laying an egg in games 8 or 9. Watch out for the receivers just not having it and just being fatigued. I don't know that it was fatigue that was wholly to blame. I think that their receivers did not look as sharp or as crisp or as confident as they had before. Is it because they played a whole lot? Is it because the line was worn down and couldn't protect? I don't know, but you could certainly look at clues 6 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago, that this team was due for a bad game, and they found an opponent who could bring it out of them. Saturday's opponent, capable, really good. They may not have the offensive line to do it. You can say all these things too, but you got to find a couple periods a day and a 90-minute, a 2-hour practice to do it. West Virginia devoted time this week to tackling, so maybe you'll see some innovation there. But again, the idea here is not to add to find something; it's to do less and ask your players to focus on 2 or 3 things and do them really well. Agree or disagree? That's at least the spoken plan here. Maybe they're all lying to us and just trying to deceive Iowa State. Twenty-four 7 Sports. I am Mike Zach.